A little difficult, this gospel today. We have a Bible group that meets on Monday morning at 9:30, I think. They're, I think, all retired, and they get into the Bible passage for the coming Sunday. So I hope they had a ball with this one. This is screwy. And Jesus mixes all kinds of strange things in it. But let's try to get at it, because it's very interesting. Now, when I prepare for my homily, like tomorrow I'll start preparing for next Sunday, I listen to the scriptures. I don't read them because I'm ADH, I think, and I get bored real fast, and I think I just miss things. So when I listen, it's different. I listen to the word being spoken on one of my apps, and things jump out at me. So this week, two things jumped out at me. The opening words of the first reading said, they trample upon. Those two words got me. Trample upon the earth, the poor. This was the description of the people. And then in the responsorial psalm, it says, God lifts up the poor. And it was the last line of the second reading, too, about lifting up. So I saw these verses, trampling upon and lifting up. Trampling upon and lifting up. Now, I'm going to make a gross generalization, so please don't get offended. If you need to get offended at the message, not the messenger. Love me, hate my message, okay? Generally, I think people trample upon. Certainly, the more people get in life, the more they want, generally. There may be exceptions, a whole bunch of them here, but I've never, ever in 69 years heard anybody go to their boss and say this, I think you're paying me too much. Can you give me less? Maybe it's said. I've never heard it. I don't deserve this. Take away some of my pay. No, the more they get, the more they want. It's in our nature. And the trouble is not just that. It's that sometimes in order to get that, we trample upon one another. We trample upon people and things. And therefore, in our religion and our faith, we hear about a God who lifts up the poor, who lifts up people. And since we're made in God's image and likeness, we're supposed to become like that, lifting up. I'm going to need some assistance. Can you get that little book for me up on my chair or on the floor, the yellow one? I forgot it. So we're supposed to become like God and lift up. And I'm not so sure that we always do that, but thank you. This weekend, I'm really into these days, what's the word? When things come together strangely and then suddenly they, synchronicity, but there's another word. It starts with, what? Serendipity. I'm serendipitous. I love serendipitous stuff. If I look up at the clock and it says 4:44, I go, serendipity. Why would I look right at this moment? And when things strangely come together, it's a kind of an intuitive way of looking at life that, how strange. Is there a message in that? Well, today we have these youth down there, 36 of our youth going through this retreat. And that in itself, there's so much potential for them to get touched even by one thought today that opens up their spirit. So it's a wonderful, prayerful moment. But this team that has come, they can only do this work for 2 years. They're missionaries. They leave their homes, and they go out on the road from parish to parish that they make up these contracts, and they go give this retreat. They're trained for about 5 months. Then they give a few retreats under supervision, and then they form their leadership, and they go. So they came last night. We fed them dinner. 11 of them slept on the floor downstairs in the rectory. Oh, my God. I wouldn't sleep on the floor for anybody. And here they are, and they're just so fired up. They made me think of this orchestra of the United States, and I can't give you the exact letters, but it's something like the Youth Orchestra of the United States. It's something like that. They go around. They're from every state in the Union, from Puerto Rico, from Guam, I suppose, everywhere that has an American connection. They get these students that love an instrument, and they form this orchestra. And then they prepare them, and then they go on tour. So a few years ago, I heard of them, and then I went to hear them at the Disney Hall. And it was the last concert of their tour. That meant that much of the orchestra was going to leave because they're only permitted to play in this orchestra the freshman, sophomore, junior year of high school. That's it. So when they finish junior, no matter how good they are, they have to leave the orchestra. So they devote themselves and they put on these incredible concerts, just totally professional. And in this concert, since it was the last one of the tour, they had their first chair violinist, who's the first chair of the orchestra, a young gentleman in his third year, I believe. And in the second half, it was a girl, and it was her junior year, so she was leaving after this concert. The last note of this concert would be the last note of her 3 years in this orchestra. And when they played it, she went like this, da 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 da. She just melted. That was her last note with them. Now, I read in the booklet only about 50% about go on and do something with their music. The others, it was a 3-year experience, and they leave it. They leave it. They're just touched by these 3 years. What an amazing thing, an opportunity, but a limited one. The same one with these missionaries. They go for 2 years, or I don't know if they can go a second term, but then they leave. The group that organizes this doesn't want them to cling to this group. They want them to get everything they can out of this and give everything they can give and go on with life, become priests and sisters and married people and people dedicated to making this world a better place. So how serendipitous, because at the same time, I think it was Saturday morning, I read in the LA Times about Gertrude Thungood. I know I blew her name, something like that. Oh, well, I've got it right here. Gertrude, I don't know if anyone else here read this article, Gertrude Thunberg from Sweden. I think she's 18 now, but when she was 16, this is what she did. So scared about the climate changes and so worried that the world was going to just be totally screwed up in a few years, she left school. And she made a sign in Swedish. It said something like, climate change or something. She takes it down to Parliament, the steps of the Parliament in Sweden, and sits there with her sign. She went on strike, but not to go play, but to make a protest. And people walk by for days looking at it and saying, probably in their head, what a geek, what a kook. But eventually people started talking to her, and she said, I'm not going to school. I have to do something. You adults haven't done anything. You're letting our world fall apart. Now, let me insert this. If you don't believe in climate change, just get over it. Just live through this homily. You won't die, okay? And I'm asking you, if you don't believe in climate change, could you at least entertain a doubt? I would rather err for carefulness than I'd rather err and take more care of the planet and find out, oh, it wasn't falling apart as we thought, than err against that and watch it fall apart. And 20, 30, 40 years from now, we will be judged by our great-great-great-great-grandchildren if we haven't cared for this earth. And this is what she's saying, this little 16, 17-year-old girl. You adults aren't doing it, so I am going to protest. Something like those youth in Florida that did it over gun violence. So suddenly people started coming, other youth and adults, thousands. Friday, I think it was, there was a protest around the whole planet. They were down at Pershing Square. Did anyone go to that in Pershing Square? Hi, Glassell Park, where are we? I wasn't there either, okay? There were thousands. There were something like 300,000 in London. I think 500,000 in Rome. I don't know. These cities, there were, I'm sure, well over 1 million young people saying, this is crazy. What are we doing? So, this little girl has spoken to all kinds of people and adults. And I'm going to read this little quote from one of her report about one of her speeches. It says, later in the week, she warned the global leaders. Wait a minute. This 16-year-old warns global leaders from all over the planet, scientists and adults. This is what it says. Later in the week, she warned global leaders that, and I quote, I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. Because it is. Because it is. Now, you have every right not to believe this, but I am stunned and delighted that a young person will stand up and say something like this. They've listened to the evidence, to all the facts that they can find. They reach this conclusion, and then they personally invest themselves to trying to make a change. And this is what Jesus is talking about in the gospel today. And what makes it strange is he talks about people with good intentions, bad intentions, and mixes it all up in this very strange little story. Because basically, as this owner, and this guy's his steward, he looks, he's stealing from him, he's not doing his work, he just decides to fire him. You're fired. So, not for the best of intentions. It's not out of love for his master. It's out of self-preservation. He says, oh my God, I'm fired. But wait a minute, I can't dig ditches. Jeez. And I don't want to beg on the streets. So he says, I know what I do. I'm going to make some friends here. So he goes to the people that owe his master stuff. He says, how much do you owe the master? He says, 100 measures of olive oil. Yeah, why don't you do this? Let's write a note for 50. You give me that, and then you go on your way. So the guy who wasn't going to pay anything, but now he's clear. He pays 50, walks away 50 free, and the master says, well, I got something. And then the steward goes to another guy and says, how much do you owe the master? Well, 100 cores of wheat, whatever a core is. And he says, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you give me 80? You can have that 20. So the master says, wow, look at this prudent steward. He doesn't hire him back, but he says, he's smart. And he and Jesus make this comment. The youth of this world know how to deal with themselves. They're prudent. And he's making this comparison. It's starting to emerge. And it's this. If they, even for bad intentions, even for wrong intentions, can make things happen and get it done, if that's what these children of the world do, what if people of faith were as prudent? What if we were as clever as them? What if we bound ourselves together around something we believe, like climate change, like being against homelessness and doing something? Now, if anybody says, homelessness is too big a problem, rubbish. We went to the moon, for God's sake. We could do it. Now, I have to say, it fails with me, your leader here. I'm ashamed of myself. This is what I've thought for well over a year. I've said it to some fellow priest friends and some other friends of mine. I've said, you know what I would like to do, and I drag my feet. What I'd like to do is invite my parish to go down with me and pray for 1 hour on Wednesdays, in the middle of the day, those that could come, on the steps of our city hall, and hold signs and say, homelessness must end, we must solve it. And shame our city council and our county supervisors into finding a solution. There are several solutions. We could do it. But I haven't done it. And not only ask you, write to every parish in the area, write to the diocese, put it in the Angelus, pay for an advertisement if I need to, speak to the LA Times, say, come on, Catholics, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, everybody, come on down with me, pray for whatever, however you pray to whoever your God is, let's unite together for 1 hour every Wednesday and tell our city council and county supervisors, we want this fixed. We want it fixed. We want it fixed. But I haven't done it. Maybe there's somebody here stronger than me who would be willing to grab my arm and yank me down there and we begin to do it. But this little girl did it. This little girl spoke up. She's been doing it for 2 years. And thousands and probably well over 1 million all over this planet Friday said, We got to do something. You adults have not yet done it. We've got to do something. Jesus, great teacher that he is, that he was, he knew how to frame a question and grab us provocatively, even in this case, using kind of creepy figures, sneaky, selfish, but look, they got it done. What if we were that prudent and that desirous of doing something in faith, with eyes of faith, that deep down we said, this has got to change? I've always said, if you want to find out why things are the way they are, follow the money. Everyone says it. Look who's supporting any cause. Check out the money. Find out who's behind it. Because I've never heard anybody say, I'd like to make less money. I'd like to not have a billion of my billions. I just don't feel I need it. That's not how we function. But what if people of faith said, without any money, this isn't what's important. What's important is what we believe and what we want to better our earth, better our world, better all of us. So I end with a quotation from this wonderful book I'm reading by Diana Butler Bass. I believe she's a Methodist minister, grounded. The subtitle, Finding God in the World, a Spiritual Revolution. Finding God in the world, not outside, right here, in you, in me, in us, in our problems. And she quotes something from Martin Luther King Jr. It says he published this shortly before his death, this essay. And he's looking at the world as he calls it a big house. This is a house, and we all share the house. And we do. You know, you and I are breathing in oxygen, breathing out carbon dioxide. There's plants around the trees. Somehow it's escaping through the walls, and the doors are open, and the trees around here are taking it in and then putting back out oxygen. I'm breathing your oxygen, you're breathing mine. Oh, God, am I breathing Father Perry's oxygen? Yes, you are. We all are. We're in this together. We can't escape it. And so this is what he wrote. And he wrote of the dangers of closed tribes, because he talks about the way that we're like tribes and wrapped around religion or culture or socioeconomic status, and we want to live walled in, close the doors, lock them so somebody can't get into our tribe. It's just part of human nature. But he says this, that's us, the world, we have inherited a large house, a great world house, in which we have to live together, black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu, a family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. He says it pretty well. And if this is what we believe, we're in it together. We just are. We can't disconnect from humanity. We all belong to each other. And if we, as prudent stewards, as people of faith, saw this and said, yes, Lord, that's it. That's what you're calling us to. Then we would do better than just because of humanitarian reasons, which is reason enough. But because of faith reasons, we would say, amen. We truly are, like it or not, brothers and sisters to one another in every way. And the sooner we learn it, the sooner we live it, the better this planet will be.